My wife made her choice, prioritizing her brother above me. That is, until she discovered that. Frank remained still on his front lawn, the fading sunlight stretching shadows over the suitcases that lay at his feet. 15 years of shared life had culminated in a poignant scene. His possessions arranged meticulously beside the rose bushes he had tenderly planted just last spring. "She can't be serious," he murmured, the mortgage statement nestled in his pocket. A harsh reminder of the one who financed the home he now found himself barred from. From the vantage of the living room window, he observed his brother-in-law sprawled in Frank's recliner, a beer casually gripped in hand, a scene that had played out each evening for the last 8 months. This was the same brother-in-law whose persistent freeloading had finally compelled Frank to voice his frustrations during dinner. "Either he contributes or he leaves," Frank had declared, words that, though reasonable, had somehow detonated the fragile fabric of his marriage. His phone vibrated, a message from Lisa lighting up the screen. "You should have known better than to make me choose." Frank Adams maneuvered his sedan into the driveway, a familiar irritation rising within him as he spotted the pickup truck still occupying what had once been his workshop space. 8 months had passed since his brother-in-law's temporary stay commenced, and he collected his briefcase, filled with the accounting files he intended to review over the weekend, before locking the car. Upon entering, the aroma of microwaved pizza enveloped him, a stark contrast to the homemade meals Lisa used to craft before Dwayne's arrival. The living room television blared a basketball game, empty beer bottles standing like sentinels on the coffee table Frank had crafted for their 5th anniversary. "Hey, bro," Dwayne called, his gaze fixed on the screen. "I secured a slice for you. It's in the kitchen." Frank nodded, his expression taut. "Thanks. Has it been a long day at work?" Dwayne gave a nonchalant shrug. "Not much happening. Still waiting on callbacks for those applications." The same response echoed for months. Frank loosened his tie, feeling Lisa's anxious gaze from the kitchen. "The bills arrived today," she murmured, gesturing subtly to the envelopes resting on the counter. Frank leafed through them with a thoughtful gaze. Home loans, essential services, revolving debt. Everything directed at him, all resting on his shoulders, while a fully capable 38-year-old man resided in their guest room without paying a dime. "How was your day?" Lisa inquired, her smile lacking the warmth it usually carried. "Fine," Frank responded, the burden of unexpressed thoughts heavy upon him. "Just fine." The dinner unfolded amidst strained exchanges about local gossip and Lisa's role at the dental office. Frank bided his time, allowing the meal to conclude, plates to be cleared, and Dwayne to extend his hand for another beer. "We need to talk," Frank stated, his tone steady yet resolute. "All of us." Lisa paused, dishcloth in hand. "What about?" "Regarding our living situation," Frank said, turning to Dwayne. "It's been 8 months now." Dwayne's demeanor changed from easygoing to cautious. "Yeah, what of it?" "When you settled in, we had an understanding that it would be for a short while, just until you found your footing again." Lisa stepped closer to her brother. "Frank, we've talked about this before. Family supports family." "I concur," Frank replied with a nod. "For 8 months, I've offered a roof over your head, food on the table, and utilities taken care of. I believe it's fair to request some contribution now." Dwayne's expression grew somber. "Do you really think I'm not making an effort to find work? I believe you could offer some support during your search, perhaps a few hundred for groceries and utilities." "Is that really the situation?" Dwayne loomed above the table. "Mr. Big Shot Accountant believes I'm a freeloader." "I didn't say that," Frank replied, his tone steady and composed. "I'm just requesting a bit of assistance with the household expenses." "Frank," Lisa's voice ascended. "How could you?" "He's my brother," she exclaimed. "And I'm your husband," Frank replied, taken aback by her response. "I've stood by your choice to assist him, yet there must be boundaries." "The boundaries?" Lisa's cheeks turned a deep shade of crimson. "The threshold is reached when my brother finds his footing. You have ample resources. This is nothing short of sheer pettiness." Frank sensed a fracture deep within himself. Pettiness. I've settled every bill, managed every expense, and never uttered a word of complaint about the additional costs. In what way does requesting a fundamental contribution reflect pettiness? Have you ever considered this? Dwayne interjected. I don't need this. I've got friends who'd be happy to have me stay. Then maybe you should call them, Frank replied, his patience wearing thin. With a forceful gesture, Lisa brought her palm down upon the table. You can't be serious. After all we've endured together, you just cast my brother aside? That's not what I need you to go, Lisa cut in sharply. Her voice was as cold as ice. Frank gazed at her, convinced that he must have misunderstood. What? If you can't accept my brother in our home, then perhaps you should leave. Frank stood in the bedroom, observing Lisa as she systematically emptied his dresser drawers into a suitcase. Her movements were robotic, her expression inscrutable. Beyond the window, Dwayne meticulously loaded boxes into his pickup, not with the intention of departing, but rather to clear out the garage for what Lisa had begun to refer to as Frank's belongings. You can't be serious, Frank exclaimed, his gaze drawn to the wedding photo perched on their nightstand. 15 years distilled into this moment. Lisa, this is our home. Refuse to go. My choice is made. She averted her gaze from his. You may return when you are prepared to offer your apology to Dwayne and acknowledge that he will remain for as long as he requires. Frank's hand moved almost automatically to his wallet, where the mortgage statement rested, neatly folded, bearing only his name on the documents, his signature gracing each check. An unusual tranquility enveloped him. And what if I choose not to depart? Lisa finally turned her gaze toward him, a steely resolve in her eyes that he had never encountered before. Then I'll call the police and report a domestic disturbance. How would that reflect on Mr. Respected Accountant? The threat rendered him speechless. He observed her zip the suitcase with a sense of finality. 20 minutes later, Frank found himself in the driveway, suitcases and boxes meticulously arranged beside him. The house key he had taken from his key ring felt oddly weighty in his palm. Your choice, Frank? Lisa remarked from the doorway, her arms crossed in the shadows. Dwayne's figure loomed in the corridor. Inform me when you're prepared to engage in reason. Frank set the key atop the closest box and turned his back. He packed his car in silence, each action measured, concealing the quiver in his hands. He set the wedding album aside for last, placing it with care on the passenger seat. As he drove away, the rearview mirror reflected his home shrinking in the distance, Dwayne already shutting the door before he had even reached the end of the street. At the reception desk of the Lakeside Motel, Frank paid for 3 nights with a credit card that felt unusually heavy in his hand. The room exuded a sterile cleanliness, its beige walls adorned with a nondescript landscape print, the air tinged with the faint odor of industrial cleaner. He placed the wedding album on the nightstand and settled onto the edge of the bed, the springs groaning softly beneath him. In the hushed solitude of room 118, Frank finally dared to open the album, revealing their beaming faces, and murmured, "What just happened to us?" Frank stirred from his slumber, the strange ceiling tiles of room 118 momentarily clouding his senses. Then reality came crashing down. He was absent from the house. The wedding album remained open on the nightstand, a testament to the hours spent lost in the echoes of happier times. 3 missed calls from the office flashed on his phone. Yet there was no sign of a call from Lisa. He had sent her 2 messages the previous night. We need to discuss this calmly, and later, please call me when you're prepared. Both went unanswered, the blue delivery confirmation serving as his only reply. The motel room exuded an unsettling strangeness, its chill and silence amplifying the absence of Lisa's familiar morning rituals, without the familiar scent of coffee wafting through the air. There was an unsettling silence as she readied herself for the day ahead. Only the faint echoes of doors shutting and the hum of engines igniting in the parking lot linger in the air. Frank stepped into the shower, utilizing the tiny toiletries provided. His usual shaving kit left behind in the rush of packing. The reflection in the glass revealed a visage that seemed to carry the weight of time, with creases etched more profoundly around the eyes. He squared his shoulders and rehearsed his work demeanor, calm, composed, and professional, before reaching for his phone once more. Yet again, there is nothing. He meticulously arranged his garments within the confines of the particle board dresser, draping his suits with care in the shallow closet. The deliberate task occupied his hands, allowing his mind to wander and reflect. 15 years of marriage, his home, his mortgage, and yet he found himself the one who was displaced. "One step at a time," he murmured, the echo of his voice breaking the silence of the empty room. He crafted a mental inventory: gather work supplies, reach out to clients regarding weekend meetings, prolong motel accommodation, attempt to call Lisa once more. By afternoon, the sterile room bore subtle hints of his presence. Laptops arranged on the desk, financial journals meticulously stacked beside them, and a wedding photo positioned for his gaze from the bed. Absent from the familiar, yet anchored in this peculiar new existence. The Golden Spoon Cafe nestled itself midway between Frank's office and, no, Lisa's, residence, a space that offers a sense of neutrality, accompanied by a gentle hum of background sounds to ensure a veil of privacy. Frank made his entrance a quarter of an hour ahead of schedule, claiming a cozy corner booth and indulging in a cup of coffee as he bided his time. Lisa arrived exactly on schedule, her expression serene, yet her eyes betrayed a hint of caution. She slipped into the booth, her jacket still on, a clear indication that her visit would be brief. "I appreciate you taking the time to meet with me," Frank began. 20 minutes stretch before me, a brief interlude before my next appointment beckons." She cast a fleeting look at her watch. "What topic would you like to delve into?" "This circumstance. It seems essential that we have a conversation regarding the events that transpired." A figure emerged from the shadows of the bustling cafe, the waitress making her entrance. Lisa placed her order for tea, then gracefully folded her hands upon the table. "There is no room for discussion. Your sentiments regarding Dwayne were unmistakably conveyed. Lisa's request for him to contribute is entirely reasonable. The majority of adults find themselves in the position of paying rent. He is part of the family, Frank. He is navigating a challenging period. For a duration of 8 months? And how much time passed before that with your parents?" Her expression grew resolute. "Are you really going to criticize my parents as well? I am highlighting a recurring theme. Your family has stood by him for years. For that is the essence of family." With a fervent motion, Lisa stirred her tea as soon as it was placed before her. "Your independent upbringing may make it difficult for you to grasp this concept." Frank inhaled deeply, his breath steady and deliberate. "My parents instilled in me the value of self-reliance. Assisting someone is not the same as fostering their dependency." "Facilitating?" Her voice lifted just a touch. "Frank, he isn't an addict. He is my brother, a man who has not maintained a consistent job for many years. Who could possibly overlook a job interview? Who perpetually finds reasons to justify why the moment isn't ideal? The economic landscape is challenging. His field has transformed. He hasn't made any contributions to the groceries." Lisa, with a decisive clatter, she placed her cup down, the sound echoing in the stillness. "That's the crux of the matter. Then money? Your grasp has always been so firm." The sting of the accusation's unfairness lingered painfully. "I have never uttered a word of discontent regarding my role in sustaining our home. Yet one must acknowledge that boundaries exist. The threshold is reached when family no longer requires assistance." Lisa glanced at her watch once more. "I must take my leave." Frank extended his hand, pausing just before making contact with hers. "When will I be able to return home?" "When you embrace the notion that Dwayne will remain for as long as he requires. These are the conditions I propose." As Frank observed her collecting her purse, a subtle transformation took place within him. "If I find myself unable to accept those terms, then it seems you have made your decision." She stood, her voice taking on a gentler tone. "I long for you, Frank, yet I cannot make a choice between my husband and my brother." As she turned to leave, Frank experienced a moment of profound understanding. She had indeed moved on. Frank made his entrance at First National right at the stroke of 9 in the morning. his collection of financial documents meticulously arranged within the confines of his leather binder. Harold Winters, the branch manager, welcomed him with a warm smile. 15 years of dedicated service, ensuring Frank receives the utmost priority. "How may we assist you today, Mr. Adams?" Harold inquired, guiding him into a secluded office. Frank replied that he needed to make some changes to his accounts. His choice took shape in the stillness of a restless night following the gathering at the cafe. Noteworthy ones. Half an hour later, Frank had successfully opened a new individual checking account, redirected his direct deposit from the joint account, and updated his automatic payments. He retained his name on the joint account, yet withdrew everything except for the bare minimum balance required. "Could I inquire if all is well?" Harold posed a question, his keen observation highlighting the peculiar alterations. "It was merely a matter of household reorganization," Frank replied, his tone laced with an air of professional detachment. "My wife and I are taking a moment to reevaluate our financial arrangements." Harold nodded, grasping the silent communication between them. "The forthcoming adjustments will be reflected in your upcoming paycheck. Is there anything more we can assist you with today?" "Indeed, that is the case. Could you suggest a reputable realtor?" "I am in search of a temporary apartment rental." That afternoon, Frank explored 3 apartments recommended by the realtor Harold. The third unit, a 1-bedroom in Oakwood Gardens, featured simple, clean lines and boasted a small balcony that overlooked a serene courtyard. Not extravagant, yet serene. The realtor conveyed that it is available for immediate occupancy with a 6-month lease agreement. The furnished option incurs an additional $200 each month. Frank performed his calculations with remarkable speed. His salary allowed him to comfortably afford this place while still keeping up with the mortgage payments on the house. Lisa's dental practice income fell short of meeting the household expenses, especially with Dwayne offering no financial support. "I'll take it," Frank said, surprising even himself with the clarity of his decision. "Kindly provide the furnishings." As he affixed his signature to the rental agreement, an unusual sensation of buoyancy enveloped him. This was not his desire, yet the comfort of a plan provided solace against the uncertainty of the motel room. Half a year would allow Lisa the opportunity to grasp the ramifications of her decision, or provide him the space to come to terms with the possibility that their union may indeed be at an end. He arranged for the move-in to take place on Saturday, then made his way to the motel to prolong his stay for an additional 2 nights. The wedding album lingered on the nightstand, a silent witness to memories, but tonight, Frank gently shut its cover before resuming his packing. Frank found himself at the heart of his new apartment, taking in the transformations he had orchestrated throughout the week. The furnished rental initially offered only the essentials: a sofa, a coffee table, a bed, and a desk. Yet, the space now bore the subtle marks of his existence, transformed in small but significant ways. The shelves were adorned with his accounting books, each one meticulously arranged in perfect order. The antique clock belonging to his grandmother, one of the rare heirlooms he had managed to bring along, ticked rhythmically upon the mantel. The kitchen held precisely what a solitary man required: a coffee maker, a single-place setting, and essential cookware. He found himself unexpectedly relishing the journey of transforming void into structure. The morning sunlight poured through the balcony doors he had intentionally left bare, a stark contrast to the thick drapes Lisa had demanded at their home. As he sipped his morning coffee, he became entranced by the patterns the light cast upon the hardwood floor. His routine unfolded effortlessly, rising at 6, savoring coffee while perusing reports, arriving at the office by 8, enjoying dinner at home accompanied by case files or a book, and spending weekend mornings at the local cafe where they had come to know his order: black coffee and wheat toast. Uncomplicated, reliable, and oddly serene at tea times, the silence enveloped him, a poignant reminder of Lisa's absence. He found himself reaching out to share a thought with an absent companion, yet these instances had become increasingly rare. He had displayed just a single photograph, not the formal wedding portrait, but rather a spontaneous capture from a hiking adventure 5 years prior. They appeared content at ease. In the time preceding Dwayne, in the era before transformation unfolded. Frank adjusted a cushion with care and glanced at his watch. Sunday evening lay ahead, serene and straightforward, devoid of the clamor of basketball games, the clutter of discarded beer bottles, and the tension of careful steps. The liberation was a dual-edged sword, a precious offering intertwined with a deep ache, autonomy achieved at the cost of cherished bonds. Throughout the entire weekend, his phone remained silent, untouched by the familiar chime of incoming calls. The strains of the Mozart sonata emanating from Frank's wireless speaker were suddenly interrupted by the shrill ring of his phone. Lisa's name illuminated the screen, sending a jolt through him. It had been 3 weeks since their meeting at the cafe and 2 since they last exchanged words. "Hello," he replied, maintaining a steady tone. "Frank." Lisa's voice carried a tautness. "It is imperative that we discuss the bills." He sank into the embrace of the sofa, his eyes drawn to the twinkling city lights that danced beyond his balcony. "What is to be said of them? The mortgage payment was deducted from our joint account, yet the funds were insufficient to meet the obligation. A call came in from the bank. I have transferred my portion," Frank responded with calm assurance. "Precisely 50%, just as it has always been." 50%? Her voice ascended in pitch. "Your salary accounts for more than half of our expenses, as you are well aware. We have consistently combined all our resources. It was during that time when our lives intertwined within the same walls. The circumstances have shifted." A moment of stillness followed. "Are you imposing a financial penalty on me?" "Indeed, Lisa, I am honoring the decision you have taken. You decided to allow Dwayne to remain without any input. I opted for a life of solitude instead of acquiescing to that arrangement. We are both navigating the aftermath of those decisions. The mortgage bears your name. One cannot simply, I am contributing precisely 50%. The remaining portion would naturally derive from your earnings and Dwayne's input." Frank maintained a steady tone, even as a weight pressed against his chest. "Has he begun to assist with the expenses yet?" The silence lingered, an expanse of unspoken words hanging in the air between them. "Subsequently, he continues to seek the perfect opportunity." "Indeed, I understand." Frank momentarily shut his eyes. "It appears that everything remains the same." "Frank, if you would be so kind. The power bill has gone unpaid, and the credit card's minimum payment is also overdue." "Lisa, I have acted justly. 50% of the mortgage, 50% of the insurance. However, I will no longer support your brother's way of living. This matter transcends Dwayne." Her voice trembled ever so slightly. "This is the essence of our existence, the sanctuary we cherish. It was our home," Frank gently corrected. "It is unmistakably evident whose domain it has become now. Is that all there is? 15 years and you simply depart from this place." The injustice of her portrayal ignited a surge of warmth within him. "I did not turn my back, Lisa. I found myself unceremoniously cast aside. A distinction exists." A prolonged stillness lingers once more. "What should I do now?" "What any grown individual would do. Embrace the decisions you make and acknowledge the outcomes that follow." Despite his intentions, Frank's voice took on a gentler tone. "Perhaps it would be wise to reevaluate the conditions you established. I find myself torn between you and my brother. You have already accomplished that." Frank's eyes lingered on the hiking photo that adorned his wall. "I must take my leave. Sweet dreams." Lisa. He concluded the conversation and remained still, lost in thought. The apartment fell into an unsettling silence around him. The Mozart began anew in the midst of a measure, breaking the silence yet leaving the void unfilled. The community mailboxes loomed at the entrance to Oakwood Gardens, a daily ritual that Frank had grown to cherish. Today, Ellen Miller from 3B was gathering her mail, her silver hair perfectly coiffed even in the midst of the drizzling rain. "Good evening, Frank," she said, her fingers deftly sifting through the envelopes. "The weather today is truly dreadful." "It should clear by morning," he said, offering a courteous smile. Ellen was the first to greet him upon his arrival at the building, presenting him with a batch of homemade cookies, her straightforwardness evoking memories of his mother. "How are you settling in?" she inquired, a keen glimmer dancing in her eyes. In her 70s, Ellen was acutely aware of everything around her. "All is well, thank you." The apartment meets my requirements perfectly. She nodded, her expression thoughtful as she considered her next words. I observed your guest the other day. The blonde woman appeared troubled as she departed. Frank's fingers paused over the key to his mailbox. He confessed, "My wife. We are choosing to spend some time away from each other." Ellen's expression was devoid of any judgment. There was a time when my second husband and I embarked on that journey together. At times, a bit of space reveals the truth. Frank nodded, recognizing her subtlety with gratitude. 3 days prior, he had caught sight of Lisa's car nestled in the visitor parking. Yet he found himself ensnared in a conference call. She had departed without making an appearance. Indeed, Ellen remarked, as she shut her mailbox with a gentle click. She engaged in conversation with Jim at the leasing office. I was delivering my rent check. Indeed, I understand. Frank maintained a steady tone, yet a flicker of curiosity ignited within him. Ellen paused for a moment, then continued, I couldn't help but overhear. She appeared to be rather worried regarding the duration of your lease and mentioned something about her brother residing with her. Frank's focus intensified. Did she share any particular details regarding her brother? He wasn't employed just yet, but he had some promising leads on the horizon. Ellen's gaze sharpened ever so slightly. Yet, I can't help but ponder the true implications when a woman mentions her brother is about to launch a lifestyle consulting business. Frank retrieved his mail, sifting through the information with careful consideration. She inquired about my lease? Indeed. It appeared you were concerned about having committed to a long-term agreement. Ellen delicately adjusted her scarf, a subtle gesture that spoke volumes. She remarked that the household expenses were becoming increasingly burdensome. Expressed a desire for you to regain your clarity of thought in the near future. A tangled web of feelings took root in Frank's chest. Not fulfillment, but affirmation. Lisa faced financial hardships, yet she continued to support Dwayne. She continues to hold out hope for Frank's return, but only on her own terms. Thank you, Ellen, he remarked, his mind already racing to decipher the implications of her words. Your honesty is truly valued. With a knowing smile, she replied, Young man, having traversed the landscape of experience, I can discern when someone is attempting to exploit a situation. Be it your spouse or her sibling. That's a matter beyond my purview. As Ellen approached her building, Frank lingered by the mailboxes, the rain softly soaking his shoulders. The revelation ought not to have taken him aback. Yet somehow, the revelation that nothing had shifted, that Lisa was grappling with the weight of expectations while Dwayne remained securely anchored in their shared abode, illuminated a fundamental truth. This transcended mere finances or housing situations. It revolved around unyielding patterns, waiting for a steadfast hand to alter their course. The inquiry lingered. For how long could he uphold his stance, and what toll would it exact on the union he still yearned to preserve? Over the course of the next 2 weeks, Frank's phone chimed with text notifications at an ever-quickening pace. Every message from Lisa adhered to a rhythm that had grown all too recognizable. The payment for your credit card is due tomorrow. Would you be able to transfer your portion? The refrigerator emits peculiar sounds. The estimate for the repair stands at $340. The installment for property tax is due next week. Require your share. With a steady demeanor, Frank consistently allocated precisely half of the usual household expenses to their shared account, opting to forego any unanticipated costs without prior conversation. As dusk settled over the city, he sat in his apartment, poring over quarterly reports, when his phone illuminated once more. The homeowner's insurance has unfortunately lapsed. Frank. Reinstatement will not occur without complete payment. He laid his pen to rest, acutely aware of the burden imposed by the relentless siege. Every request stood as a reasonable entity on its own. These were collective duties. Nevertheless, the underlying message lingered unspoken. Dwayne's contribution remains unacknowledged. There was no recognition that the nature of their arrangement had shifted at its core. Last month, I completed my half of the transfer, he typed. Have you completed your payment? The reply arrived with remarkable swiftness. It seems that my dental office hours have been reduced. I find it challenging to manage everything by myself. Frank gazed intently at the message. Lisa's role at the dental practice had consistently served as a source of supplemental income, rather than the mainstay of their financial support. That had been his part to play, a role he had never voiced discontent about, until Dwayne's prolonged presence disrupted the equilibrium. "Has Dwayne secured employment yet?" he inquired, fully aware of what the response would be. The trio of dots manifested, vanished, and then returned once more. "The matter at hand is not that. It's possible that our home lacks insurance." Frank. A familiar tightness gripped his chest. With every exchange, a subtle fracture formed in their connection. Confidence, collaboration, shared esteem. Each time he offered financial support without confronting the underlying issue, he inadvertently perpetuated the very dynamic he sought to alter. He finally penned, "I'll transfer my half again. However, Lisa, this pattern cannot endure." Her response was nothing more than, "Thank you." Frank finalized the transfer, muted his phone, and turned his attention back to his reports, the figures beginning to blur gently before his gaze. The weight of upholding his boundary was becoming increasingly burdensome, even though he appeared calm on the surface. Yet an instinct whispered to him that they were nearing a pivotal moment, a threshold where something would inevitably yield. As Frank busied himself with the preparations for dinner, the sudden ring of his phone pierced the air. Lisa's name lit up the screen, yet instead of the familiar text message, it was a call, an unexpected twist in their recent communication rhythm. He cleaned his hands and responded, "Is that you, Frank?" Her voice resonated with an unusual quality, strained and tinged with a hint of panic. "The power has been cut." He placed the knife aside, the one he had been wielding to slice through the fresh vegetables. "Could you clarify what you mean?" "They turned it off, you know. There was no forewarning, no indication whatsoever. I have just returned home, and the darkness envelopes everything around me." A rustle of motion echoed softly through the line. The refrigerator hums softly, its contents chilled to perfection, and yet an unmistakable chill permeates the air around me. Frank cast his gaze through the window, taking in the January evening, where the temperature hovered well below freezing. "Have you received a notice of disconnection?" "Perhaps. I'm uncertain." A multitude of bills lay before me. Her voice faltered. "Typically, Dwayne takes it upon himself to collect the mail during my working hours." The unvoiced accusation lingered in the air, suggesting that Frank bore some responsibility for this outcome, even in the wake of their separation. "Have you reached out to the utility company?" he inquired, maintaining a steady tone. "They are not open." The doors to customer service swing open at 8 a.m., a muted sound that could have been a cry of despair. "Frank, I must leave this place tonight. The temperature has already plummeted to a brisk 50 degrees indoors." He shut his eyes, imagining their dwelling becoming increasingly frigid with each passing hour. What is the situation with Dwayne? Where could he be? Enjoying the company of friends. A novel bitterness tinged her voice. His call is met with the silence of voicemail. Frank's apartment exuded warmth, with lights casting a gentle glow. The evening meal is currently underway. The juxtaposition of Lisa's circumstances presented a moral quandary he had not foreseen. "Perhaps a hotel would be a suitable option," he proposed, yet the suggestion rang empty as it left his lips. "With what funds, Frank? Since your departure, I've been meticulously managing every dollar. I did not depart, Lisa. You cast me aside." The adjustment occurred on its own, yet he lamented the moment it happened. "I will arrange for the necessary funds to secure a hotel room for tonight. On the morrow, you may reach out to the utility company to orchestrate your payment." The silence lingered, an expansive chasm between them. At this point, I find myself unable to continue. What should be done? Imagine we can exist apart, and it holds no significance. Imagine I have the ability to handle everything by myself. Her voice took on a steely edge. "It is imperative that you return home, Frank. This situation has persisted for far too long." The request, or rather the demand, hit him with the force of a physical blow. Have the conditions shifted? Is Dwayne preparing to leave his current residence? This is not concerning Dwayne. Her voice grew increasingly desperate. This narrative unfolds around us, our union in marriage. You are imposing this on me to demonstrate your perspective. I am not imposing any penalties on anyone. I am choosing not to support a circumstance that I deem intolerable. Frank's voice held a calmness, unwavering amidst the chaos that churned within him. My heart aches for you, Lisa. Our shared moments linger in my heart, a bittersweet echo of what once was. However, I refuse to allow myself to be exploited again. Will you really allow me to succumb to the cold instead? The charge lingered, palpable and heavy in the atmosphere. I extended an offer to cover the cost of a hotel stay. With every exchange, Frank sensed the chasm between them growing ever wider. I have maintained an equal contribution to the household expenses. I refuse to revisit the circumstances that compelled my departure. Transfer the hotel money, she said at last, her voice devoid of emotion. However, Frank, this situation cannot persist. You must choose what holds greater significance, your pride or the bond of our marriage. Once the call ended, Frank lingered in his cozy kitchen, the half-finished meal slipping from his mind. The weight of the realization bore down with a profound intensity. Something was bound to shatter soon, whether it be his determination or the very fabric of their marriage, perhaps even both. The cafe where they had first crossed paths weeks prior felt like the perfect backdrop for this dialogue. Once more, Frank made his entrance ahead of time, claiming the familiar corner booth as his OW, and as Lisa stepped inside. Her expression bore the unmistakable mark of their most heated disputes, determined, almost as if it had been practiced in front of a mirror. "Thank you for meeting me," she said, gliding into the booth while still clad in her coat, reminiscent of their earlier meeting. "Your message conveyed a sense of urgency." Frank maintained a steady tone, yet an undercurrent of tension vibrated in the air around them. "Indeed, it is." Lisa set her hands down, palms resting against the surface of the table. "That I have consulted with a lawyer." The words lingered, their significance far exceeding their unadorned nature. Frank sensed a chilling weight descend into the depths of his stomach. "A divorce lawyer?" he inquired, though the answer was already apparent to him. "Indeed." She locked her gaze with his. "This distance has lingered for nearly 2 months, Frank. The dwelling is crumbling into disrepair. The bills are accumulating. No longer can I endure this existence." "Indeed." Frank fought to maintain a neutral expression. Though challenges loomed large, the concept of divorce had felt abstract until now. "What counsel did the lawyer provide?" "I have a rightful claim to ongoing financial assistance. Such abandonment serves as a basis for desertion," Frank interjected, his composure faltering. "Lisa, you cast me out of our shared sanctuary. You warned me that you would involve the authorities if I chose to stay." Her cheeks flushed with color, a response to your unreasonable stance regarding my brother. "And now you wield money as a means to compel my choice." "I have upheld my financial obligations. I have not contributed to your brother's way of living." As Frank gestured, his wedding ring glimmered in the light. "How is Dwayne doing, by the way? Are you still in the pursuit of a new job?" Lisa's expression grew taut. "Let's not divert our focus. We are discussing the intricacies of our union. We are discussing the ultimatum you presented. Initially, it was about stepping out of the house. Now it's about coming back or confronting the possibility of divorce. Neither solution truly confronts the underlying issue." "Very well." Lisa inclined her body, drawing closer. "Let me outline the forthcoming events. It's simple. You can either return home and provide complete financial backing, or I will initiate divorce proceedings and pursue spousal support, which my lawyer confidently believes I will receive due to the income gap." Frank gazed intently at his wife's face, seeking the essence of the woman he had vowed to love 15 years prior. "Is that truly what you desire, Lisa? Is it really necessary to end our marriage simply because I requested your brother to help with the household he has occupied for almost a year? What I desire is the return of my husband." Her voice trembled ever so slightly. "I yearn for the return of our former life. Our lives transformed the moment Dwayne arrived, and you permitted him to exploit us both." Frank's voice held a softness that contrasted sharply with the severity of his words. I yearn for the return of our former life as well, yet that necessitates confronting the underlying problem. Thus, that is your response. Are you prioritizing your pride above our marriage? Frank turned his wedding band with deliberate slowness. I am embracing self-respect and establishing healthy boundaries. The inquiry lies in whether our union can embrace those elements. Lisa collected her purse, the decisive nature of her actions conveying a profound message. You have 1 week to make your decision, Frank. Subsequently, I submitted the documents. As she turned to leave, Frank stayed in his seat, the weight of the gold band pressing down on his finger. 15 years of intertwined existence weighed against a principle that had shaped his very sense of identity. Regardless of the path he selected, a cherished piece would inevitably slip away. The inquiry lingered. Could any semblance of worth be extracted from the ruins of what their marriage had devolved into? Frank sat at his desk, the morning sun casting a soft glow over the room, the remnants of yesterday's turmoil still lingering in the air. Beside his coffee mug, his wedding ring lay, a silent testament to the weight of Lisa's divorce ultimatum. She had declared a week for the decision to be made. It felt as though a genuine choice existed, yet the terms remained steadfastly the same. The early light stretched its fingers, weaving long shadows throughout his apartment. He had slept unexpectedly soundly, a sense of clarity rising from what ought to have been a night filled with chaos. A transformation had taken place within him during their encounter at the cafe. Not rage, but a calm conviction that he unfurled his leather planner, the very companion that had witnessed the rise of his accounting practice from the ground up, and commenced jotting down notes in his meticulous script. If Lisa truly intended to pursue a divorce, he had to grasp the weight of the consequences that lay ahead. Not as a menace or a strategic response, but as a truth to be confronted with the same calculated mindset he applied to every obstacle. Monetary factors, asset distribution, fiscal consequences. Every item was meticulously noted, devoid of sentiment. Yet his hand faltered as he penned the parameters for future relationships. For all the trials and tribulations, his heart remained steadfast in its affection for her. That was the conundrum he had been grappling with. How to cherish that love while rejecting an unhealthy dynamic. Boundaries are not punishments, he whispered softly to himself. The expression encapsulated emotions he had long sensed yet struggled to express. Their safeguard for both sides. He lifted his wedding ring, feeling its weight in his hand. 15 years of intertwined existence could not be undone by a single demand. Yet he could not delude himself into believing that revisiting the same circumstances would bring about any resolution. What Lisa required wasn't surrender, yet clarity, even if it remained hidden from her view for the time being. Would you care for another cup of coffee? Ellen Miller lingered next to Frank's table in the Oakwood Gardens community room, a pot cradled in her hand. The Saturday morning coffee gathering had woven itself into the fabric of his routine, yet he often found solace in the company of his newspaper, preferring the quietude of solitude. My sincere gratitude. He beamed as she poured more into his cup. Ellen had unexpectedly woven herself into the fabric of his new existence. Her straightforward approach and candid insights provide an unexpected sense of solace. She took her place in the chair opposite him. It appears you are a man who has reached a conclusion. Frank arched an eyebrow. Is it so apparent? Upon reaching my age, one becomes attuned to that particular gaze. She swirled cream into her coffee. My second husband wore that same expression before he ultimately confronted his daughter about her spending habits. Did it come together as planned? Frank inquired, a flicker of curiosity igniting within him. Initially, not at all. Ellen's eyes sparkled with a hint of nostalgia, crinkling at the corners as laughter from the past danced in her mind. For 3 long months, she remained silent in his presence. Yet, in time, she found her footing once more, secured a position. She began to take charge of her own finances. Their bond flourished as a result. Frank inclined his head with deliberation. At times, to truly care is to refrain from smoothing the path ahead. Precisely. Today's youth refer to it as enabling. Ellen lifted her cup, savoring the rich aroma as she took a sip of the steaming coffee. Roger, my husband, often remarked that you can't assist someone who is perched upon your shoulders. They must be allowed to find their own footing first. The profound insight hit Frank with an unforeseen intensity. For nearly a year now, my wife's brother has made our home his own. Unemployed. There is no contribution. Ellen acknowledged with a knowing nod. And she selected him instead of you? She presented me with an ultimatum. Return home and embrace the terms laid out, or she will initiate divorce proceedings. Ellen regarded him thoughtfully, her coffee cup cradled in her hands. So, have you come to a decision? I believe I have. Frank experienced a serene assurance enveloping him. I cannot assist her by compromising my self-respect, nor can I aid her brother by enabling his reliance. It's a difficult lesson, Ellen murmured gently. To love someone can often entail allowing them to confront the repercussions of their decisions. As Ellen drifted away to engage with other residents, Frank lingered at the table, the coffee slowly losing its warmth before him. The affirmation from the older woman regarding his instincts provided not only solace but also a profound sense of correctness. A reassurance that maintaining one's ground was not an act of selfishness, but rather an essential stride toward healing, regardless of the fate of the marriage. On a tranquil Sunday evening, Frank found himself on his balcony, captivated by the sunset as it brushed the sky with hues of amber and gold. Tomorrow signaled the arrival of Lisa's deadline, yet he had already crafted his response. It was not a counter-ultimatum, but rather a definitive declaration of his boundaries and limitations. On his coffee table rested a manila envelope, filled with documents meticulously prepared by his attorney. These were not divorce papers. Rather, they constituted a formal separation agreement designed to safeguard both their interests, all the while keeping the possibility of reconciliation alive under more favorable conditions. He had also penned a letter, 3 meticulously crafted pages that conveyed what eluded him in face-to-face conversation. His enduring love for Lisa, his recognition of her devotion to family, and his resolute stance against perpetuating a situation that jeopardized all parties, Dwayne included. The silence of his phone lingered throughout the entire weekend. As the deadline loomed closer, silence enveloped the air, with no texts or calls from Lisa to break it. He pondered whether she genuinely thought he would yield, or if she was bracing herself for what came next. Frank pivoted from the captivating scene outside and stepped back into his apartment, firmly shutting the balcony door to ward off the encroaching evening chill. The space that had once seemed fleeting now exuded a sense of comfort, mirroring his burgeoning inner strength. Photos he had thoughtfully arranged, books of significance, and small details whispered, "This is not merely a place to reside. This is a home." Whatever unfolded tomorrow would prove to be a challenge. The separation agreement would probably provoke an initial surge of anger in Lisa. The letter may not breach her barriers, yet for the first time since his eviction, Frank experienced a deep sense of tranquility regarding his choice. He was not prioritizing pride above the sanctity of marriage, as Lisa had portrayed it. He opted for integrity, nurturing the hope that genuine reconciliation could one day blossom from that very foundation. It was uncertain if Lisa would ever recognize the change, yet his direction was unmistakably defined. Frank set his wedding ring in its box on the nightstand, not casting it aside forever, but placing it there until the vow of mutual respect and partnership could be genuinely honored. Frank made his entrance at the cafe a quarter of an hour ahead of schedule, a formal separation agreement nestled within a leather portfolio, his meticulously crafted letter resting beside it. He had selected an alternate venue for their rendezvous, a serene bistro tucked away near his workplace, offering an air of intimacy. The deadline that Lisa had set has come to an end today. He summoned a cup of coffee and perused his notes for the last time. His attorney had cautioned him against an in-person meeting, recommending that Lisa's threat of divorce be addressed through more formal avenues. Yet, Frank felt compelled to honor their relationship with the respect of a direct conversation, no matter how it might unfold. As Lisa stepped inside, he observed the delicate indicators of her weariness, the faint shadows under her eyes and the tautness in her shoulders. She donned the blue dress he had always found captivating, and he pondered whether the selection was intentional. "Thank you for coming," Frank said, her voice warm as she settled into the booth. "I had the impression that you would be returning to your hometown." Her tone was a delicate balance of hope and apprehension. Have you come to a decision? I possess. Frank laid his hands flat upon the table's surface. However, the situation is far more complex than merely deciding to return or not return. We must confront more fundamental issues that require our attention. Lisa's expression grew taut. Frank, I made my terms unmistakably clear. Indeed, you were. He held her gaze with unwavering resolve. I find myself unable to embrace them in their current form. However, my purpose is not to present opposing demands. I wish to explore the elements that could foster a successful partnership for both of us. She cast a fleeting look at the portfolio. What is that? Choices, Frank responded. There shall be no ultimatums. There was an undeniable quality in his serene confidence that caused her to hesitate. For the first time since their separation commenced, Lisa regarded him not with anger or frustration, but with a measured curiosity. I can't just throw my brother out, Lisa remarked, her voice steady after Frank laid out his perspective. He is part of our family. I'm not asking you to leave him behind, Frank responded. I am requesting that he either contribute to the household or seek out his own living arrangements. A distinction exists. The soft afternoon light danced through the bistro's windows, creating intricate patterns upon their table. Their coffee sat forgotten, growing cold as the fervent discussion unfolded around them. You don't understand what Dwayne's been through, Lisa insisted, though her voice wavered, lacking the conviction it once held. Please help me understand, Frank said softly. From my viewpoint, we have fostered a dynamic that is detrimental to all involved, him included. Lisa twisted her napkin, a gesture steeped in familiarity and tinged with anxiety. He found himself without a job when the construction company made the difficult decision to downsize. He bore no responsibility for it. That moment occurred 14 months ago, a full 10 months prior to his decision to move in with us. He sought to secure employment. Did he genuinely make an effort? Frank maintained a steady tone. When did he last sit for an interview? Has he sought employment beyond the realm of construction? Has he contemplated the possibility of training programs? Lisa's gaze fell to the surface of the table. He claims the market is utterly unmanageable at this moment. Frank observed that the unemployment rate has dipped below 5%, and during my commute, I've spotted 3 construction sites displaying hiring signs. A lengthy silence lingered in the air between them. Then Lisa uttered a remark that left him utterly speechless. Last night, when the power flickered and vanished, he was not at home. Her voice drifted softly, almost lost in the air. He returned home the following morning, clutching a brand new gaming system. Upon inquiring about the source of his funds, he replied, investments. Frank held his tongue, allowing her to carry on. He lacks any investments. Lisa lifted her gaze, an unfamiliar light flickering in her eyes, a moment of awakening. Amidst the refuse, I stumbled upon discarded receipts. For months, he has been engaged in cash jobs, assuring me that he is actively searching for employment, all the while earning money that remains elusive to me. The revelation lingered in the space between them, encompassing not only Dwayne's deceit but also Lisa's recognition of it. I feel like such a fool, she whispered. What happens now? Lisa inquired, her fingers delicately tracing the edge of the separation agreement that Frank had presented to her, yet had not requested her signature on. The twilight had settled in, wrapping them in its embrace. Their nook in the bistro now bathed in gentle illumination. After 3 hours of candid dialogue, they unearthed layers of miscommunication and brought to light the truths they had both been evading. It hinges on your desires, Frank responded. I'm not making demands, Lisa, yet I cannot go back to a scenario that jeopardizes our marriage and fosters Dwayne's reliance. She inclined her head with deliberate slowness. Yesterday, I had a conversation with my sister. Her words linger in my thoughts, resonating like a haunting melody. She remarked that I've been viewing Dwayne as if he were still 16, in need of protection, rather than recognizing him as a mature man who can stand on his own. Your sister may have a point, Frank remarked, a subtle smile playing on his lips. This morning, I informed him that he has 2 weeks to secure his own living arrangement. Lisa's voice carried a subtle strength, soft yet resolute. He reacted poorly to it. I declared my choice of you above all else, even my own family. What was it that you mentioned? It was he who compelled me to make a choice, not you," her gaze locked onto Frank's. "That you would never request me to cease loving my brother merely to halt enabling him." Frank sensed a delicate change in the air between them, the first true connection they had felt in months. It wasn't a full resolution, but rather a meaningful step toward mutual understanding. "I wish to avoid a divorce, Frank." Lisa extended her hand across the table, pausing just before it met his. "Yet, I find myself reluctant to lose my essence within the confines of this marriage. I seek reassurance that our differences won't jeopardize the foundation we've established." "That is precisely what I desire as well," Frank remarked, at last grasping her hand. "Not a matter of submission, but of partnership. Not merely enabling, but offering steadfast support." A vast chasm separates them. As they departed the bistro side by side, the separation agreement lingered and signed within Frank's portfolio. Not due to the resolution of the issues, but rather because they opted for an alternative route, the more challenging, yet profoundly honest endeavor of reconstructing what had been broken. "Will you return home?" As they approached her car, Lisa inquired. "Not tonight," Frank replied. "It seems we both require some time to reflect on this matter. And Dwayne must grasp that this situation is not merely a fleeting impasse." She nodded, a flicker of disappointment crossing her features, yet an undercurrent of understanding lingered. "When will it be?" "When we are both prepared to embark on a new beginning, rather than merely reverting to familiar habits," he offered a soft smile. "My hope for us remains steadfast, Lisa." In stark contrast as he observed her depart, Frank experienced neither victory nor loss, only a profound assurance that whatever unfolded thereafter would be grounded in authenticity rather than concession, resilience rather than capitulation. The road ahead was shrouded in ambiguity, yet for the first time in many months, it shimmered with authentic potential. Golden rays of spring sunlight poured through the windows of Frank's office, illuminating the pages as he meticulously examined the quarterly tax filings for his clients. The calendar perched on his desk displayed April, marking 6 months since that crucial conversation with Lisa that had irrevocably altered the course of their marriage. He cast a fleeting look at the framed photo now resting on his desk, capturing a moment from 3 months prior. Lisa and him at Lake Tahoe, their first weekend getaway since the separation. In the photograph, her smile radiated a fresh authenticity, a stark contrast to the forced expressions that had marked their last months under the same roof. The lease for the apartment had come to an end in February. Frank had returned home in a slow, deliberate manner, beginning with weekends, then extending to 3 nights a week, and ultimately, just last month, he had relinquished his apartment entirely. The shift was intentional. Every step was taken only when both were prepared. Dwayne had certainly departed, but not without a touch of theatrics. The 2-week deadline had elongated into 3, then 4, yet Lisa stood resolute. Frank had kept his distance throughout that ordeal, allowing her the freedom to manage her brother in her own manner. One evening, she reached out to him, her voice trembling with tears, after Dwayne had hurled accusations of betrayal her way. Yet, she stood firm, unwavering in her resolve. The shrill ring of Frank's office phone sliced through the silence, pulling him from his reverie. "Your wife is on line 1, his assistant announced. "Hey," Frank replied, a smile spreading across his face at the sound of Lisa's voice. "I wanted to confirm whether our dinner plans with Marcus and Jen are still set for tonight." "Certainly. I shall arrive home by 6 o'clock. Residence." The term had slowly yet entirely regained its significance. "Have you come across this?" As the evening settled in, Lisa passed her phone to Frank while they lounged in the living room, the echoes of their guests' laughter fading into the night an hour prior. Frank perused the social media post shared by Lisa's sister, featuring a vibrant image of Dwayne clad in his construction company uniform, grinning widely next to a finished deck project. The caption stated, "Filled with pride for my brother. Just 3 months at Riverside Construction, and he's already managing his own projects." "I hadn't seen it," Frank remarked, returning the phone. "Well done on his part." Lisa examined his expression closely. "Your lack of surprise is quite evident. I find myself pleased, though not taken aback." Frank selected his words with great precision. Dwayne possessed an unwavering capability that he merely required the appropriate inspiration. Lisa nestled beside him on the couch, drawing her feet beneath her in a well-worn habit. Last week, I happened upon him at the hardware store that he was in the midst of acquiring tools. Genuine tools that he purchased with his own funds. How did it unfold? Surpassed my expectations. Her fingers danced across the couch fabric, creating intricate patterns. He expressed his regrets, Frank mentioned, acknowledging that he had been exploiting the situation and that the loss of his easy ride served as the necessary jolt to his awareness. Frank held his tongue, allowing her to carry on. He resides in an apartment alongside 2 colleagues, and he is in a relationship with a dental hygienist. A delicate smile danced upon her lips. He even proposed to reimburse a portion of his debt to us. Frank recognized the weight of that statement. I advised him to hold onto it and channel his resources into his tools instead. Lisa lifted her gaze. Was that a mistake? Absolutely not. It demonstrates a transition from enabling to supporting. A vast chasm separates them. Lisa rested her head gently against his shoulder. He inquired about the possibility of joining her for Sunday dinner next week, emphasizing that it was merely dinner, not a request to move back in. She clarified hastily. I believe that would be acceptable, Frank remarked, astonished by the sincerity of his own conviction. The fury and bitterness that had accumulated during those trying months slowly faded away, giving way to a tentative hopefulness regarding all their connections. I couldn't have achieved this without your unwavering support, Lisa said softly. Even during those times when I resented you for it. The porch swing swayed softly, its creaks harmonizing with the gentle hum of summer as Frank and Lisa sat, captivated by the dance of fireflies emerging in the twilight. 1 year had slipped by since they parted ways. A year marked by meticulous reconstruction, sincere dialogues, and a rekindled bond. I've been contemplating the idea of renewing our vows, Lisa remarked, her hand nestled gently in his. As we celebrate our 16th anniversary this September. Frank shifted his gaze to examine her features as the light began to wane. What a splendid notion! Not out of necessity, she clarified, but because my understanding of them has evolved. In what way? Lisa paused, a stillness enveloping her as she collected her thoughts. In the early days of our marriage, I believed that love was synonymous with the absence of choice. If you genuinely loved someone, all things would effortlessly fall into place. It has become clear to me that love involves the deliberate decisions we make each day, often those that are challenging. Frank gave a subtle nod. Boundaries serve not as barriers to exclude others. They serve as the bedrock upon which something more resilient can be constructed, she concluded. That is what I wish to honor. It's not merely about our survival through this, but rather the foundations we've constructed in its wake. Later that evening, as they settled into the familiar cadence of their nightly routine, Frank caught sight of Lisa lingering by the dresser, cradling something tiny in her hands. What is that? He inquired. She pivoted, unveiling the wedding band nestled in her palm, the very one he had laid aside during their time apart. I discovered this in your nightstand while we were tidying up last weekend, she remarked, her tone soft and soothing. You never returned it to its rightful place. Frank cast his gaze upon the unadorned skin of his ring finger. I found myself in a state of anticipation, longing for that precise instant when it would once more carry the significance it was meant to hold. What comes next? Lisa extended it towards him. Frank grasped the ring, feeling its familiar weight, solid and comforting in his hand. Now it holds even greater significance. As he slid it back onto his finger, the metal embraced his skin with a warmth that felt like returning home after a long journey. Familiar, yet imbued with a sense of novelty. Neither a mark of duty nor a cage, but rather a bond fortified by challenges, founded on shared respect, clear boundaries, and a love that has demonstrated its strength in facing the most difficult realities. The morning sunlight streamed through the kitchen blinds, creating a tapestry of golden patterns on the table where Frank and Lisa enjoyed their coffee. In the crisp air, the melodic calls of birds echoed from the maple tree, a living testament to the love they had nurtured since their first year of marriage. Within the space, A soothing quiet enveloped those who had come to cherish the mere act of being in each other's company. Once more, do you recall the moment you stepped into your own space for the very first time? Lisa inquired, her fingers gliding along the edge of her mug. My fury clouded my vision, leaving me disoriented. Frank nodded, and a deep ache settled within me, leading me to fear that our marriage was on the brink of collapse. What changed for you? She inquired. At what moment did you begin to have faith that we could resolve this issue? Frank pondered the question with great care, and in that moment, I understood that standing firm transcended the mere act of winning an argument. It was about honoring my own worth by demanding better, while also holding a deep respect for you, believing in your potential for growth. He extended his hand toward hers. What about you? At what moment did you realize? As Dwayne finally took the step to move out, Lisa found herself confessing, observing him truly thrive now that he was compelled to rely on his own strength. I came to the unsettling realization that I had been aiding in his downfall all this time. As her gaze locked onto Frank's, I witnessed the essence of true love, a desire for someone to evolve into their finest self, rather than merely ensuring their comfort. In a moment of contemplative stillness, Lisa finally broke the silence. It seems that this is the underlying lesson we can draw from it all. At times, the most compassionate act we can offer is to hold others accountable, even when it brings discomfort. At times, the most powerful action we can take is to acknowledge our mistakes, Frank remarked. Lisa tightened her grip on his hand. Your perseverance in our journey fills me with gratitude. Your choice to select us fills me with gratitude. Frank responded with simplicity. The day was unfolding outside, vibrant and full of promise. The neighbors are departing for their daily commutes. Young ones gathered, eagerly anticipating the arrival of their school buses. Life unfolds in its familiar rhythm. Yet all had transformed, not due to differing circumstances, but because they had both come to understand that love devoid of boundaries was not love in its truest form, merely reliance cloaked in the guise of fidelity. The arduous journey toward truth had reunited them, fortified at the fractures of their past.